All right,
Hi,
recording.
perfect, thank you. Hi, this is Erin Canine. I am with the Office of Public School Construction, and we will be providing a presentation today with the California School Finance Authority, California Department of Education, going over the Charter School Facilities Program Proposition 2 filing round, which will be open from July 3rd, 2025 to October 30, 2025. We will have presentations from all three agencies, and at the end of each agency, there will be a question and answer session. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted to OPSC's website after the meeting. The Office of Public School Construction is under the authority of the Department of General Services. We're staff to the State Allocation Board, and we implement the school facility program. This is a program where districts can apply for funding to construct new facilities or modernize new facilities. We have several programs underneath this, such as new construction, modernization, or facility hardship, all programs which districts can apply to use on their facilities. In 2002, the Charter School Facilities Program was added to the School Facilities Program. This program specifically provides funding for charter school facilities. It is a grant program. This is important to note because funding is based on grants that projects qualify based on certain elements within their projects. It's not funding based on actual costs, but it's a grant program where 50% of the funding received is a state grant that does not need to be paid back if your project is successful and moves all the way through. And the other 50% is an applicant match. That match can be provided by either a cash contribution, or we do provide a loan option that can either be for that entire contribution or a portion. In the past rounds, since 2002, we have provided $1.4 billion for charter school facilities, and Prop 2 now provides $600 million for new applications. Those applications need to be submitted during a specified filing round. They can't just come in, and we don't fund just on date order on a flow basis as the applications are submitted. And as I mentioned before, that round will open on July 3rd, 2025 and close on October 30, 2025. Eligible charter schools must provide classroom-based instruction. That is defined in Education Code. They must have their petition approved prior to the application submittal, have 2 years operating or administrative experience in California, but they can be independent or dependent, district autonomous, non-autonomous. Those are often terms that are used, but both of those types of charter schools may apply. Applicants may be either the charter school. So as I mentioned, this is the one program that charter schools can apply to on their own, or the local school district can apply on behalf of the charter school. For the local school district to apply, it must serve the same grade level that the charter project will house. And for district dependent charters, the district will need to be the application. So that's important to keep in mind. I know a lot of charters are authorized by a COE. Most instances, the COE would not be the local school district that would serve the pupils housed in the project. You want to think, okay, if I built a school with these funds and that school closed, where would those students go? Would they go to the COE, in which case that would be the district that could apply? Or would they be absorbed by like the high school district or the unified district or the elementary school district? So that would be the district that could submit an application on behalf of the charter school. The applicant will be the entity that would receive the funding. If a loan is requested, they would be responsible for paying back the loan. They are responsible for the project, and they would ensure program compliance, including entering into any program agreements that are required. We provide 2 types of funding. There is funding for new construction projects. These are projects that add capacity to a new or existing site. So this would be a project that maybe is adding a couple of more classrooms or building new classrooms on a site. It can also include additional facilities. There is funding built into the funding provided for those classrooms to also possibly build, a subsidiary facility. This also could be purchasing and retrofitting an existing building. So this would be if you have a non-DSA approved building that you want to purchase, like an office building, and retrofit it, bring it up to Field Act so that it is approvable by the Division of the State Architect. That's what retrofitting means. Then that could be used, that would be considered a new construction project because you would be adding capacity. You took a building that did not have classrooms, and now you have Field Act compliant classrooms at the end of your project. We also provide funding for rehabilitation. This is district-owned facilities, so it's not charter-owned facilities. It has to be owned by the district. They are at least 15 years old, and then they're going to be rehabilitated for charter school use. So rehabilitation includes modernization. This would be your work that extends the useful life of the facilities on that school site. It should not be things like routine maintenance work. If you want to come in and just do some updating, some maintenance work that would generally be considered routine maintenance, that shouldn't be used. That shouldn't be part of modernization funding. But it could also be like-kind replacement. This is where you demolish and replace like-kind. And what we consider like-kind in the charter school facilities program is you're demolishing the same number of classrooms and the same amount of square feet, and then building back the same amount of classrooms and square feet. So you're not adding capacity. If you were to, let's say, demolish a 10 classroom site and build back a 14 classroom site, you could submit a combination new construction and rehabilitation project, where the rehabilitation project will demo and replace the existing classrooms, and then the new construction part of it will build back those excess classrooms. All projects must include at least one classroom. That's the classrooms are kind of what generate your funding or cap your funding. So you have to be doing work constructing or rehabbing at least one classroom to even be able to generate funding. So I've been asked before, what is like the minimum work that you can do one of these projects? Those would be the key things. We have no straightforward minimum saying it has to be at least this dollar amount, or it has to, include this type of this much work. But this information on the slide kind of lets you know, okay, well, it has to have at least one classroom. And for modernization, it should not be like routine maintenance. One other thing I just want to point out really quickly is that when you're going through the life cycle of an award, if you're successful, you will get to a point when you're coming in for construction funding that you will need to meet what's called a 60% commensurate requirement. And that is a requirement that the funding you receive, 60% of it is spent on hard construction costs. So that can kind of help you back into, okay, what would be like the smallest or the minimum, kind of size project we could do with this funding. Title requirements to facilities in order to be eligible for funding under the program for rehabilitation must be held by the district. So the district would have to hold title to the site and the facilities. And again, remember, it's the district that serves the same grade level as the charter project. For new construction that's not combined with rehab, because if you have a new construction on a district site, then the district needs to hold title to those facilities too, because it's on their site. For new construction, the local school district could hold title. Again, it would be the one that serves the same grade level. A local governmental entity or a charter school may request to hold title. There are security requirements that will need to be followed if a charter school holds title. We will record a lien on the property for the entire amount of funding received from the state. So that would be the state grant plus any loan that is requested. We will place a restricted covenant on the site requiring that the facilities be used for public school purpose, and then a remainder interest to a local school district in the event that the charter school is no longer using it for charter school purposes. And then this will be subject to the successor charter provisions. The successor charter school provisions are required for any type of project, whether it's new construction or rehab, and whether regardless of who holds title as well. But it is a requirement that if charter school funds are used on facilities, if the charter school ceases to use those facilities, then those facilities first need to go to a successor charter school. That way, we're ensuring that the bond funds that are meant to be for charter schools are continuing to be used for charter schools. If a successor charter school cannot be found, then the district may use the facilities. So some general school facility program requirements. Remember, this is the larger program that we administer that then has all of these kind of smaller programs underneath it, such as the Charter School Facilities Program. If you receive funding through our program, you will need to have final plan approval by the Division of the State Architect and the California Department of Education. This is at final apportionment, so this is down the road. This is not needed now, and I'll kind of get more into what's needed now further down in the slides, but this is eventually coming. This is what you'll need when you convert to final. You will also at final apportionment need to have a final site approval from CDE if you're purchasing a site, or if you're rehabbing a site that was never approved by CDE. You will need to enter into an SFP grant agreement every time you receive funds from us. This is a requirement that everybody needs to meet regardless of charter school facilities funding or not, that to release their funds. And the grant agreement basically provides information on requirements of the applicant to release their funds, reporting requirements, eligible expenditures with those funds, common ineligible expenditures, et cetera. Your project will need to follow public contract code, labor code, as well as additional items certified to on the funding applications. There's two funding applications. There's a 5009 that's used now to apply for preliminary apportionment, and then a 5004 that is used later on down the road when you convert to a final apportionment. Both of those forms can be located on our website under forms. Also on the charter website, there's links to these forms as well. So if you want to go ahead and read those certifications, I encourage you to do that so you can see, okay, what am I going to have to do if I receive funding from this program? Then we have some specific charter school facilities program requirements. You will need to have a current financial soundness determination from CSFA. This will be the applicant and the charter if they are different. You will need this determination at preliminary, and then it needs to be current when you access any type of funding, any type of advance funding, and then you will need it again at final apportionment, so when you convert to that final apportionment. We do have specific agreements that you'll also need to enter into, which include a memorandum of understanding and then possibly a facility use agreement if a district holds title, and then a funding agreement if a loan is requested. CSFA will talk more about these when they do their presentation next. So the funding process, how this whole process works, it's kind of a two-part process. And the first step is to apply for a preliminary apportionment. That is what's happening now. So anybody who submits an application, this is what they're applying for. And so a preliminary apportionment is just a reservation of bond authority. It is, we basically will look at the application you submit and a project narrative to determine what your project is going to include, what aspects it's going to include. And then we will calculate a total project cost based off of grants. Remember, it's not actual costs. And we will reserve that bond authority for your project. This allows the applicant to know, okay, I can now go out, design this project, and get CDE, DSA approval, purchase a site, do all of the things I need to do, get CDE site approval if that's included in your project, come back and submit an application to convert to vinyl, knowing that I've got bond authority here. Because with district projects, bond authority is constantly being used, and district projects to our other programs are processed kind of, on a date order from when they come in. So this is different. This reservation of bond authority gives you the security to know that you can do all of the requirements and bond authority is going to be here for you. It is a competitive process, which is why applications are submitted during specified filing rounds and not on a flow basis. That competitive process consists of assigning preference points to every application. There are 4 categories. Relieving district overcrowding would be applied to a new construction project that is 1, located in an overcrowded district, and then 2 is relieving that overcrowding. So that would mean the district is certifying that the project will house their unhoused pupils. There's 4 to 40 points for that, and it ranges based on the severity of the crowding and then also the effort put into the project to relieve that overcrowding. Low income is another category that both new construction and rehab projects get. It's anywhere from 4 to 40 points, and low income is based on free and reduced priced meals percentages. So this will be the free and reduced priced meals percentages posted on CDE's website during the as of the close of the round. So whatever the most current percentages posted on CDE's website as of October 30th when the round closes will be the percentages we use. There's 3 options. You can use the percentage of the district that you're located in. You can use the charter schools percentage, or you can use another public school within the charter school general location. That's a defined term, and I'm going to go ahead and go into that a little bit more further down. You can also get 40 points for rehabilitation projects. It's a straight 40 points if you are rehabbing district-owned facilities. And then you get 40 points if you are a nonprofit entity. Now, this is a defined term, so it's really important to note that nonprofit entity means that the entity operating the charter school is organized under the 501c3 category with the IRS, or a nonprofit public benefit corporation for under the state corporations code. So the entity operating the charter school must meet that definition. Sometimes the charter school is nonprofit, but the entity operating the charter school is not. But if you do meet that definition, then you will get 40 points. If you have a combination application, so that's remember where you've submitted a rehab app and a new construction app, we will give the apps the points jointly. So that way you don't have one app with higher points and the other combination app is down here. They'll get whatever points the other application gets. So they'll receive these points together. Then after we assign those points, we don't just fund the charter with the highest points and go down. Statute specifies that we need to fund charters that are basically representative of the state of California. And so we have 4 matrix categories that instead of funding the charter school with the most points, we first fund the charter school with the most points in different geographical regions of the state. Then we go down and fund the charter school with the most points in different locales, urban, rural, and suburban, and then different size charter school, and then different grade level charter schools. The urban, rural, and suburban regions are based on the National Center for Education Statistics information and their locale codes that they provide there. The charter school size is based on the enrollment for the charter school as it is posted on CDE's DataQuest website as of the close of the application round. And then the grade level is based on the highest grade that the charter is approved to serve in the petition, not the project grade level. So if you're approved to serve grades K through 12, but you're building a K-6 school, you will be considered a 9-12. We break them up in K-6, 7, 8, or 9-12. You would be considered a 9-12 school because the highest grade you are approved to serve is 12. The regions, the locale codes, and then the sizes, like from what enrollment to what enrollment it equates to each size, are all in the definitions section of the school facility program regulations, 1859.2. And then we have an example of the funding matrix and how it works on our website. So you can go ahead and look at that and refer to that. So you can see an example of how the points are provided and then how we go through all of these matrix categories and provide preliminary apportionments. So if a project is successful and is reachable and receives a preliminary apportionment, then that project will be able to access advance funding. We provide advance funding to all projects for design costs, And then for any new construction project that is going to include site acquisition, we also provide advanced funding to purchase the site. It's important to know that our funding is provided through the priority funding process. So it's not something where you get your preliminary apportionment, we want our design, you send us a request, you get the money right away. There is a process to get the funding, and this is how everyone gets funded through our program. So districts in their programs get funded the same way. We basically have 2 funding periods a year, generally. It's generally a spring and a fall bond sale. And there is a process to go through to certify to receive those funds. And then there are requirements then once funding becomes available to request those funds with timelines that need to be met to be able to request those funds, so we don't have just cash sitting and waiting and not being requested. There is a link on this page that will take you to our website and the priority funding process page that has a lot more information and explains this in more detail. But I'm also available to go over this with you if you want to reach out and give me a call and have me walk you through this. But the important thing to just kind of take away from this slide is just knowing that funding isn't going to be provided instantly. There is going to be sometimes a waiting period for the bond sales to occur. So then after you have accessed those advanced funding, if you choose, but after you've designed your project, received all of your approvals, you are going to submit an application to convert that preliminary apportionment to a final apportionment. You have 4 years to do this with a one-time 1-year extension. So when you receive your preliminary apportionment, as of that board date, the clock will start ticking. And all you need to do to convert to a final apportionment is submit the funding application with your final plan approval from CDE, DSA, final site approval if you're purchasing a site, and have entered into a legal escrow at least to purchase the site. So you don't have to have constructed the school or started construction. You just have to have all of your approvals and submit that conversion application. At that time, we will look at what you actually ended up building. So this may have changed a little bit. It may have that maybe it went down. You didn't build as many classrooms as you intended, but we will look at what you actually ended up doing in the project. We now have approved plans, and we will adjust the grants based on the approved design project using current grant amounts. Any authority that we reserve for you that you end up not needing will come back to the program. But let's say you end up needing additional authority, you ended up needing more than we reserved, and your application supports that increase, and you could be found financially sound, and we have additional authority available, we can provide that additional authority. Again, you will then go through a priority funding process to receive this construction funding. It is important to note that for new construction facilities, so this is not rehab, so demo and replace would not follow under this. That's rehab. But for new construction facilities, you cannot occupy the facilities before this final apportionment is submitted. You have to, the application to convert to the final apportionment is submitted. We have to receive the Form SAB 5004 before you can occupy. So calculating the preliminary apportionment involves 3 steps. Whether it's new construction or rehab, there is going to be a base grant, which is like the main amount of funding, like source of funding for a project. And then we will have supplemental grants that we can add to that base grant based on elements you're going to have in your project. And those supplemental grants sometimes are a percentage of the base grant, or sometimes they're just additional grants that are added to the base grant. And then we have an inflator factor that we will add to these grants, except for site acquisition, that account for increases in construction costs over the 4 years. So you're going to come in, we're going to calculate your reservation using our current grants. And then 4 years from now, when you convert, we're going to recalculate using those current grants. This inflator factor kind of gives you a bubble of bond authority reservation to kind of like hopefully cover those increases so that you have that authority kind of sitting there if you need it, if you take the full 4 years. The base grant for new construction projects is calculated based off of the classrooms in the project. For rehab, it's based off of this eligible square footage that you will be rehabilitating, but it may be capped by the classrooms in the project. This is to prevent projects that maybe are doing the one classroom to qualify, but then want to rehab their gym, their NPR, their library, their admin. It'll end up capping the funding at that one classroom, what that one classroom would have provided under a new construction project. So to calculate the new construction base grant, what you would do is you would determine how many classrooms you are going to construct and what grade level those classrooms will house. We have specific grade levels. They're broken out K through 6, 7 through 8, 9 through 12, special day class severe, and special day class non-severe. So if you were going to build a class that maybe housed both 6th and 7th graders, you would need to determine what grade is it going to house the most and pick that grade configuration. So you'll determine the number of classrooms, the grade level that will be housed in them, and then you will multiply the number of classrooms by the CSFP loading standard. So we load 25 grants in a K through 6 classroom, and then 27 in a 7 through 12 classroom, 9 in severe, and 13 in non-severe. And what we're loading are grants. So that our loading standard might be different than your actual how you load those classrooms. You may place more or less students in those classrooms, but this is the loading standard we use for loading grants. And then we have a dollar amount, a specific pupil grant dollar amount that is assigned to each grade level. So for a K through 6, if you were going to build 10 classrooms, you would say 10 times 25 times $15,929. And then that's how much would be your base grant for that project. So these pupil grant amounts have funding in them to build the classroom, but they also have funding built in to also build your additional facilities, such as a library or an NPR. If you're only requesting funding for maybe 1 or 2 classrooms, it might not be enough to also then build those additional facilities. But when you're building a new school and you're asking for funding for 20 classrooms, then that scale gets bigger and that funding will be available for those additional facilities. One last thing to note is that the pupil grants that you request at your preliminary apportionment cannot be increased at final. So you're going to want to make sure that you think about your project and you are requesting the amount of pupil grants that you are going to need, based on the number of classrooms you're going to build. You can reduce. So if you reserve you're going to build a 20 classroom new school, but then you decide, we only want to do 15, you can do that when you come in and convert for final, but you can't increase. Technically you could increase, you just won't get the additional funding. You would have to be covering the costs for those additional classrooms because those pupil grants can't be increased. So for rehabilitation, I mentioned it's based on square footage, but can be capped at new construction. So it's kind of a 2-step calculation. The first step is to total up all of the non-toilet eligible square feet in the project, multiply it by $260, and then total up all of the toilet area and multiply it by $466. Add those two together. That's your rehab square footage base grant. But then you need to check and see, okay, is it capped by the new construction capacity? To do that, you would go back here and determine how many classrooms are going to be rehabilitated and what grade level they are, and calculate the new construction base grant for the classrooms in the project. The lesser of the two is the rehab base grant. And then just like the pupil grants, the square footage that is requested at the preliminary apportionment, it can be decreased at conversion, but it can't be increased. So then to those base grants, as I mentioned, we have supplemental grants that we can add based on different aspects in your project. I provided the school facility program regulations that go over these grants as they apply to the charter school facilities program. So you can look over those sections to determine, okay, how do I qualify? What projects qualify for each of these grants? But all applications are eligible if they qualify for an additional grant for small size, impacted site, urban location, their geographic location. New construction projects may also receive additional funding if there's going to be multi-level construction, site development, site acquisition, and if site acquisition, they may also ask for general site. And then rehabilitation may also ask for elevator. So these are the supplemental grants that may be reserved at the preliminary apportionment. So just a quick example on the amount of funding you could receive. So if you have a new construction project, you are going to be purchasing a 6-acre parcel. That's your plan. And to support this, you determined that a median cost per acre in the area is $1 million. So that would be like a $6 million cost to purchase that 6 acres. CDE recommends that for your project, you need a 10-acre site. And you plan to construct a 14-classroom K through 6 elementary school, and it will be multi-level. This project, using those pupil grants and then adding on the supplemental grants that it would qualify for, would qualify for a total project cost of $23 million roughly. Half of that would be the state share, so about 11.6, and then the applicant would need to come up with the match of another 11.6 roughly. So this calculation right here, it assumes that the project qualifies for all of these grants. You'll notice it does not include the inflator factor yet. That would be something that would be up here as another line item. And so it would increase both the state and applicant share and then the total. But we don't know what that's going to be. We'll calculate that when we're getting ready to award the preliminary apportionment. So I didn't include that. It also is to account for taking longer to convert. So it's not a true, this is what your total project is. It's accounting for increases in grants over the year. So this is an accurate idea of how much you would be receiving. You can see the base grant, multi-level construction. All of this right here are costs that are received because of site acquisition, general site, and urban. One last thing I want to note is the information that with regards to funding that is being provided on the 5009 is calculating the state grant. So you'll see when you submit an application and it asks for specific dollar amounts, you'll see it ask for the 50% value. That's because the 5009 calculates the state grant. So this calculated this amount right here, and then you need to match that for your total project cost. So then let's say someone wants to do that same project, but they're going to do it under rehab instead. They're just going to modernize that amount of area, 14 K through 6 classroom. They're either going to modernize or maybe they'll demolish and replace. They have 18,000 square feet of non-toilet and 1,000 square feet of toilet. I kind of picked those numbers specifically because they don't affect the cap. This project is not capped. I was trying to kind of keep this a little simple. The site is or will be multi-level, and so DSA will require an elevator. It's an existing site that is 6 acres, and CDE recommends the 10-acre site. Again, I kind of picked those acreage specifically because to qualify for that urban and impacted site, your site needs to be 60% or less of what CDE recommends. And that information is in those regulations that I provided on that previous slide. So for this one, you can see it's a little bit less because there's none of that site acquisition. So this would equate to a $12 million project versus 23. But under new construction, 7 million of that was all related to site acquisition. So there's really kind of a $4 million difference in this particular scenario, may not always be the case, between doing that project as new construction versus rehab. Again, this assumes that the project qualifies for these grants, and it does not include the inflator factor. And I do want to point out that, the funding is less, obviously, if it's modernization, because, we assume you don't need as much because it's not a new construction project, even though you can do demo and replace. But you do get the preference points with rehab. So a standalone new construction project would not be getting those preference points, wouldn't be as competitive as a rehabilitation project would. So getting started, if you are considering submitting an application, there's quite a few things that you need to do prior to submitting the app. You can't just get on, log online and submit your app. You're going to need to do a couple of things to get ready. One, as I mentioned, and for most of you, this might already be complete, but you do have to have an approved charter petition, or if you are making a revision to that charter petition, that revision needs to be approved prior to the date the application is received by OPSC. You're going to want to determine basically your project needs. What is your project going to be? Is it going to be standalone new construction, purchasing a new site? Are we going to have a combination? You're going to rehab a district site, but maybe build back more. So you're going to have both. Just straight rehab. There is a requirement, and this is a certification on the 5009. Remember, that's the application to apply for a preliminary apportionment. But there is a requirement that the charter school and school district consider existing facilities. So when you're signing your certification, you're certifying that you have done that. Once you know what your project is going to include, you can reach out to CDE, that would be Angel, who will be presenting later on in this presentation, and request a preliminary recommended site size letter. You'll recall in my examples, I mentioned that CDE recommended a 10-acre site. Well, that is what this letter will provide based on what you're planning to build, what type of school you are. She'll be able to provide just a recommended site size letter. So you want to make sure you reach out to her as soon as possible, because you need to have this before you can submit an application. It can't be submitted after you submit the application, and these can take some time for her to create because she's going to be getting quite a few of these requests. You will also want to determine your charter school general location. Remember, I mentioned this when we were talking about the free and reduced price meal percentage. So this is a defined term if you were to go into our regulations and look in .2 at the very beginning. And it is the address of where your project is or will be. So you might be in location A and you're going to rehab a district facility and eventually move there. So it could be, where you are or where you're going to. Or you can use cross streets if, let's say, you're going to be buying a new site. And so you don't know an address of where your project is going to be, but you know a general vicinity of where you want the project to be. You can choose cross streets to form a 1 to 3 mile radius. And so that radius will be used to go out from that point to see if there's another public school that has a higher free and reduced price meal percentage. And then it also is used to figure out that median cost per acre. You might recall when I was talking about the new construction project that you determined a median cost per acre is $1 million. That is using the charter school general location and kind of going out anywhere from 1 to 3 miles and looking all of the sales that have happened to determine a cost per acre in that location. So you'll want to determine what that general location is going to be. Also very important, you need to notify. So this is for charter schools applying independently only. So if you have a district that is going to be applying on your behalf, they don't need to do this, but charter schools applying independently must notify in writing the superintendent and governing board of the school district that they intend to apply. So this is the school district again, where the project will be physically located and that serves the same grade level as the project. So it may not be your authorizer. It might be a different district, especially if you're authorized by the COE. It also could be multiple districts. If you're not located in a unified school district, you might have to notify both the elementary school district and the high school district if your project is going to house, K through 12 or K through 8, and the elementary school district only serves K through 6. This notification must be received by the superintendent and governing board 30 days prior to submitting an application to OPSC. So September 30th is the last day that the district can receive this notification, and you can still submit an application by October 30th when the round closes. We will ask for a copy of the notification and evidence to support the date that the district received the notification, so we can make sure that you waited the 30 days before submitting an application. So for the notice, the notices are going to have different information that it's basically requesting from the district based on the type of project that you're going to do. We do have sample district notifications that you can use, a template, and that is on the OPSC website under the charter program. And you can just enter the project specific information and district specific information and use those notifications. But for a new construction project, what you're going to do is you're going to ask the district to update their new construction eligibility and provide an unhoused pupil certification and then a methodology that was used to determine that certification. The certification must be discussed at a regularly scheduled public meeting. For the rehab notice, you are going to ask them to enter into a rehabilitation agreement with the charter school for the use of the facilities to be rehabilitated with CSFP funds. So this agreement must be executed, must be approved and executed by the district and charter prior to submitting the application. Again, it should be discussed and approved at the school district's board meeting. And the key purpose for this agreement is that the district is aware that the charter school is going to be rehabilitating district facilities with CSFP funds. So it doesn't have to have all of the elements that like a facility use agreement would have or a Prop 39 agreement. You know, it doesn't have to have any who's responsible for hazardous waste insurance or the length of term. It just needs to basically state that the district is okay with the charter school using CSFP funds to rehabilitate the facilities. And the reason why is because remember, I spoke about this earlier, once you use the CSFP funds, if you are no longer, if the charter school that received the funds is no longer using the site for charter school purposes, the district doesn't just get it back. They have to first, it has to first be offered to a successor charter school before the district can take those facilities back. So that's why this is important. Again, remember, it just really needs to state that the district is okay with the charter school using CSFP funds to rehabilitate. It doesn't have to have all of the other information in it that is included in a facility use agreement. The applicant will also need to have a school board resolution supporting the submittal of the application. Most district applicants, if they've been active in our program, will probably have the school board resolution. If it's an old resolution, the key is it can't be older than 2002 when the charter program existed, because a resolution date prior to that would not cover the CSFP. But for charter applicants, you will need to have a school board resolution. This allows us to know that the school board knows this application has been submitted. It's not just being submitted by, someone, an interested party on behalf of the charter school that thinks this is a great, opportunity. The resolution date is going to be provided on the 5009. But the basic format of it is that the charter school or whoever the applicant is aware of the application and approves the submittal. You will also need to have a school board resolution to name a designated representative. Now, these two resolutions can be combined. You can do them together or you can do them separate. But the resolution to name the designated representative, this will allow that person and only that person or persons, you can name multiple people, to sign and submit applications on behalf of the applicant. So that would be either the district or the charter school. We have a sample resolution for this specific resolution, and this resolution can be edited to also include that school board resolution to support the application if you like. But we have a link here for a sample resolution to use, and you can edit this to indicate it's for a charter school. There's examples of other ways you can edit, but they reference other programs. You can edit it to indicate charter school, but you could also just use it as is, which states basically the whole it's all encompassing of the entire program. But the key thing about this sample resolution is it really strongly states that whoever the representative is, they're not just signing and submitting applications, but they're certifying on behalf of the charter school, of the district, that the charter school or district is going to be meeting all of the requirements that are in the certification sections on those forms. And some of those requirements are, during the application process, during the design construction process, but some of them go on further after the project is completed. And so it's important for the person that is going to be elected as the representative to know that that's what they're going to be responsible for. You will also need to create an OPSC online user account for the applicant. If you are a district applicant and you're on file with us, you already have an account created, but most charter school applicants are going to need to log in and, going to have to create an account so that they can log in. When you do create that account, you'll be submitting this resolution to support that. I have some more information a little further on how to create an account that I'll talk about in more detail. You will also need to create a project tracking number. This is a universal number that is used by our office, CDE, and DSA to identify your project. And this can be created in OPSC Online. So you won't be able to create that until you have that OPSC Online account. So to create an account in OPSC Online, you'll go ahead and email the online support. You're going to include with your email request the name of the applicant, so either the charter school or the district name, so not the person, but the actual name of the charter school or district. Then the name, position, address, email, and phone number for the designated representative. So you can have one representative or you can have two. It's a good idea to have a backup in case we require additional information be submitted, a revised application, and the named representative is on vacation, then they have somebody that can also sign in their place. You'll submit the approved resolution that names, approves that designated representative. Again, there's a link to that sample board resolution that you can use. It's important that you know that you need to name the exact representatives in the resolution. So you can't just say our executive officer is the designated representative. You need to put the person's name and then state they are the executive officer. And so if somebody were to leave during this process and you have someone new come in, you would need to do a new resolution to name them as a designated representative. If you are a charter applicant, you are also going to want to include the grade levels that will be housed in your project, and then the school district or districts where your project or projects will be located. Remember, I mentioned if you are located in an elementary high school district, so you're not in a unified district, and your project is going to kind of encompass grades that span both school districts, you would want to list both districts. So remember, the districts listed must serve the same grade level as will be housed in the charter project. And we will then use this information to give you the authority to log in and submit an application under those districts. So complete application, what needs to be submitted when you are getting ready to submit your 5009? We have a submittal checklist also on our website. So remember, on our website, we have the district notices templates, the matrix example, and then we also have this checklist that lets you know everything that must come in. All application types will be submitting a Form SAB 5009. They'll also submit a narrative description of the project. This is what we're going to use. This is going to help us a lot in terms of determining what type of grants you're eligible to reserve. So the regulation states that the narrative must at least include the number of classrooms that you are rehabilitating or constructing, and then the grade level housed in each of those classrooms, the intended opening, so your projected opening date for the project, if the project will be permanent or portable construction, and the charter school general location. So that's the minimum information, but you can also provide additional information that would help us understand what you think your project is going to include. It's also really helpful if you have a rehab project, if you include the district name and address for that, for the district school. You will include your CDE, preliminary recommended site size letter, for both project types. You will have one copy of your approved charter petition. We also request that you submit minutes from the charter authorizer board that approved that petition, so we can verify it was approved. Verification of nonprofit status if the entity operating the charter school qualifies. A copy of the notification that was sent to the superintendent and governing board of the district or districts. Remember, that's just for charter applicants. And then verification of the date that notification was received. Again, that's just for charter applicants. And then This is a new requirement, and this is for school district applicants only. School district applicants will have to submit a board resolution acknowledging the requirement to submit a 5-year school facilities master plan. This is a new requirement. I'll talk about this a little bit more in the next screen, but a new requirement from Prop 2. And again, only school district applicants. So if the charter school is the applicant, they do not need to submit this master plan. And then lastly, any documents required for the financial soundness review to CSFA. So these documents, the CSFA documents, will go to CSFA. They do not need to come to us. And then all of these other documents that I'm talking about that make a complete application come to OPSC, come to me and us. They don't need to go to CSFA. So the 5-year school facility master plan is a new requirement that came from Prop 2. It is a requirement of all school districts to participate in the school facility program. It doesn't matter what program you are filing under. The key point is it's due for the charter school facilities program. It's going to be due when the district submits the Form 5004 to convert the preliminary apportionment to a final apportionment. So it's not due now. The only thing that is due now from the district is the school board resolution acknowledging that 5-year facilities master plan will need to be submitted when the 5004 is submitted to convert to preliminary apportionment. And we have a sample resolution that the districts can use on our website. Then for new construction applications, there's some additional documents that are needed. There will be if for charter school applicants, the eligibility documents that were requested in the district notice. This is the forms to establish or update their new construction eligibility, that unhoused pupil certification, and the methodology. The key thing with this is these are going to be necessary for a charter school application, new construction application where the charter is applying on their own. These will be needed to make the application complete. However, they do not need to be submitted with the application. They can come in later because this will take the districts some time. There is a requirement that when you notify the district will have 90 days from the date the charter school notified them to submit the eligibility information. I'm sorry, the certification for that unhoused pupil, the certification for the unhoused pupil certification. So you can go ahead and submit your application. We will see that you notified the district. We will see that they received the district. And then from that point, we will start tracking, okay, have they submitted the documents we need to update and their certification. So just keep that in mind. You don't have to wait until you receive those to submit your application. You just need to notify with it, wait 30 days, and then you can submit your application. For district applicants, we also will need the documents to update eligibility. And for districts, though, they don't need to certify, they don't need to provide an unhoused people certification, discuss it at the board. They just need to update their eligibility so they know what they have. And then they would report the pupils that are going to be housed by the charter project on the form itself. If there was any documentation to support what they reported, they would go ahead and submit that as well. But since the district is, applying, those items would be included with the original application submittal for district applicants. Additionally, for new construction projects, we provide a grant for site development. This is a grant that kind of helps get the site ready for construction. Most people request just $70,000 per acre, which does not require anything to support that request. However, some people might want to request site development costs based on an actual project. Maybe they've already designed the project. This funding round kind of came around just right at the right time because they're getting ready to start construction. So they have this information. Then they can submit an actual site development worksheet and have the funding reserve based on their plans and that worksheet. Or you might have a historical project that was very similar. Basically, it's the same thing that happened. The district built a school that was in the same area, same size, very similar. We could use historically approved site development worksheet to support the amount reserved. So if you're not requesting the 70,000 per acre, we would need that supporting documentation. If you are requesting site acquisition, then we need some additional documentation to reserve the amount for you. There's two different ways you can go about reserving site acquisition funding. You can either submit an appraisal or a preliminary appraisal. This would be if you already know what site you want. And so this is what you're going to ask to reserve the funding based on. It does need to meet the requirements and regulation, and the valuation date, so not the report date, but the valuation date within the appraisal needs to be within 6 months of when we receive the Form 5009. The other thing you can do is a median cost valuation. This would be a price. This would be where you look at all of the sales that occurred in the area in a specific time frame, and you can go out from 1 to 3 miles. That's that charter school. It's where that charter school general location comes into play. And you basically report all of those sales in an editable Excel worksheet, and then figure out a price per acre. So you provide the acres for each of the items you provide the address, for the sales, what it sold for, how many acres it was, and then a price per acre. And then you calculate the median cost per acre. We ask for the Excel spreadsheet to be submitted, an editable version. So that's what would be uploaded in OPSC online so that we can just check and verify that easily. But it must meet the requirements and regulation, and there is more information on what type of sales and things you can look for to provide in that report. And then also for projects that include site acquisition, we reserve for site cleanup. So this would be for like fees you need to pay to Department of Toxic Substances Control. You can request just 15% of the site costs, and you don't need to submit anything to support that. But if you want your request to be like site development and based on actual or historical costs, then we would need those invoices or estimates from DTSC to support that cost. So for rehab applications, you are going to include your signed rehab agreement if it's a charter school applying. Remember, district applicants do not need to submit this rehab agreement, as it's assumed since they are applying to the program, they understand the requirements of the CSFP and successor charter school. Again, it has to be approved prior to application submittal. You will also include a site map with the facilities to be rehabilitated, identified, and labeled. So we want to know, okay, is this facility a classroom? Is it a toilet? Is it a library? Make sure you highlight the classrooms and toilet area so that we can easily find them. And then indicate the grade levels on the classroom. So we'll use this to verify that cap when we're calculating the rehabilitation base grant. You're also going to want to provide drawings with dimensions of all facilities to be rehabilitated. So that way we can figure out the amount of the total square footage that is eligible at the site. Provide a square footage spreadsheet. So you'll take those drawings and then list all of the facilities that to be rehabilitated in a spreadsheet. Provide the square footage dimensions for each facility, and then provide a total. So you're going to basically provide a total of all of the square footage for non-toilet area, and then a total of all of the square footage for toilet area. And then those totals, are what you're going to report on the 5009. So that'll match that. Important when you are providing the square footage, you can provide square footage for any DSA facility that is going to be rehabilitated in the project and is eligible. So that's 15 years or older. And you are going to be measuring by the enclosed exterior square footage. So you wouldn't go, let's say you have a 960 square foot portable, you wouldn't measure inside and report, say, 862. You would be reporting a 960 square foot facility. You also need to submit documentation to verify the age of the facilities to be rehabilitated. Very good documentation is the DSA approval dates, showing the dates that those facilities were approved by DSA. Facilities do have to be DSA approved to qualify as rehab. You can't rehab facilities that are not DSA approved. The age of the facilities will begin 12 months after the plans for the building were approved. So if you find that DSA approval date, add 12 and then 15 from there. So applications are going to be submitted through OPSC online. That is our online application system. There's a link in here that will take you to the online application, but it can also be found under resources on the OPSC webpage. You will need, as I mentioned, an OPSC online account. It's really important that applications are submitted with this process, as all future certifications and applications will be submitted in this format as well. So if you are successful and you want to access funding from a priority funding round, those certifications are submitted through OPSC Online. When you're ready to convert to a final apportionment, that application is submitted online, and then everything is there that you submitted. You can see all of the documents you submitted and access them easily because they're in that one location. We do have an exception. If OPSC Online is down, if you are unable to submit, you can email the application to our ART, our application review team. So you want to make sure you email it to them. They're the ones that track the applications that come into our office. And then you can include in the CC myself, as well as Kevin Falk and Chelsea Martinez Harris. They will be the other two OPSC staff that will be assisting with this round. If you do not have email access, please contact our office I'm sorry, not email, but online access. Please contact our office and we can give you instructions for mailing a hard copy application. It's really important that the applications are received by OPSC no later than 11:59 on October 30th. If it's received after that, it won't be valid. So make sure the best way is submitting on OPSC Online, but if you do need to reach out for mailing instructions, make sure you reach out timely to allow time for that receipt date. We will be having a second webinar. This webinar will be our online presentation. This will just be OPSC. This will be presented by myself, and it will just go over how to submit an application online. So we'll go over again, creating an account, how to log in, how to submit your application. But then with that, we'll also cover where to get the information to enter in the application. So a little more detailed information on things like creating the PTN, where to find your locale code on the National Center for Education Statistics, where to find your free and reduced price meal percentage on CDE's website, et cetera. So we haven't scheduled that one yet. It will be a little bit closer to when the round opens. But if you are interested in watching that one as well, I encourage you to sign up for our email blast, and there is a link there. There's two options. You can receive all email blasts from our office, or you can just receive email blasts that are associated with the Charter School Facilities Program. But just like this online presentation, that one will also be recorded. So if you're unable to attend, you can watch it later. I have some helpful links here. Information, the first link is the link to our charter webpage. This is where the sample district notifications are, the example funding matrix, the application submittal checklist, and there is a Form SAB 5009, a PDF version of it, if you do end up needing to submit by email or mail submittal. But I would suggest that you take a look at that form because all of the certifications are there. So that will be a good form for you to look at, see what you need to certify to, but then also to play with, kind of like you can fill it out and kind of play around with the information, and you'll be able to see, okay, what type of information am I going to need to provide? When you submit online, there is a few spaces where we request additional information that's not on the 5009. It's information to help us with processing. For example, the 5009 just asks for a free reduced price meal percentage. It doesn't ask, okay, are you using the district, the charter, or another public school? So if you do this online, you can indicate what are you using, and if it's another public school, you can go ahead and provide the name and the address of that school so that we can verify that a little bit quicker. There's a link to the school facility program regulations. And I included the sections that cover the definitions and then the charter program. Link to our handbook. Charter is section 7. Then a link to the Ed Code. That's the Article 12 Charter Schools that covers Charter School Facilities Program. And then lastly, a link to a page that provides information on public school construction, the whole process, requirements, things like that. So I am your primary contact for any questions leading up to submitting applications. As I mentioned, I think when we first started, if you have any questions that come up later, if you watch this presentation again, if you want to discuss specifics like your specific project, what it might qualify for, help with calculating the preliminary apportionment, reach out to me. You can go ahead and email me or call, and we can schedule maybe a time to meet and discuss your specific project and how funding might look for you. And with that, I think we are going to move on over to our questions. So I am going to stop sharing my screen. Okay. So the first question we have is, did I hear you correctly that the facilities cannot be owned by the charter school? It has to be owned by our authorizing district. Okay, so that is only if you are rehabilitating district-owned facilities. So if you want to apply for rehabilitation funds, that type of funding can only be used on facilities that are owned by a district. And it may not be your authorizing district. It's going to be the district that serves the same grade level that will be in the project, that will be housed in the project. So an example I gave was a COE is the authorizing district, but you're going to build a K-8 school. Where would those kids go if your school closed and they were absorbed by a district? Would the COE house them? Are they students that the COE would house? Or would they go to the elementary school district? Or would they go to the elementary school district K-6 and then your 7 through 8s would go to the high school district? So that's the district that needs to own the facilities to be able to rehab. For new construction, the title can be held by either the district, again, that serves the same grade level as the project, a governmental entity, or the charter school may request to hold title. If the charter school requests to hold title, we have the security requirements of a lien. That'll be re-recorded for the entire amount of funds received. And then restricted covenant saying that it needs to be used for public school use. And then a successor charter school provision that it'll go to the district if a successor charter school cannot be found in the event that the current charter school is no longer using it for charter school purposes. Next question here. If you've modernized your facilities in the past 2 years, can you apply for a reimbursement of money already spent? Yes. So rehabilitation can be reimbursed as long as the contracts were awarded after the approval, after the implementation of the Charter School Facilities Program. In my presentation, I mentioned that new construction projects cannot occupy their facility prior to submitting a Form 5004 to convert from preliminary to final. That does not apply to rehabilitation. So yes, you can reimburse for projects that you did 2 years ago. The key thing though is they need to have met all of the requirements, all of the program requirements. So that's the labor code, the public contract code. They need to be DSA, CDE, plan approval. So as long as they qualify for funding under our program, then the work could have been done previously. Let's see. Okay, that's just an AI. Our chartering district is TK-8. We are K-12. Can we apply for a K-12 facility? Yes, you can. In this scenario, you would be, I'm assuming that you are then physically located not within a unified school district, but an elementary school district that serves grades TK-8 and a high school district that then serves grades 9 through 12. So you can apply. You would be notifying both districts. You would need to send notification letters to both districts. The TK-8 would be notified for if you are doing new construction work, the facilities that were going to be built for that would house your K-8 or TK-8 students. And then the notification to the 9-12 district would be for the classrooms that would be housing grades 9 through 12. Do DASS schools receive any points? I'm not familiar. Lori, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself, what is a DASS school?
We're an alternative school. Just a second, I'm trying to think of the name of it. Instead of the regular dashboard, we are an alternative school, but we are an independent study program as well.
Okay, so then do you qualify as being a classroom-based charter under the definitions in Ed Code? Do you know? Because funding can't be provided for non-classroom based.
Okay, and we don't qualify under, because we are a non-classroom based, however, we do have several components where our students do come on site. So that's the reason I was asking about.
Yeah, I think it's roughly 80% of the Ed Code is in there, but it would be like, I think at minimum 80% of the time the students are in class.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's no preference points for any type of school, but just to kind of answer this question in general, the only preference points are those 4 categories of relieving overcrowding, rehabilitating district-owned sites, free and reduced price meal percentage, and nonprofit. But to qualify, you do have to provide classroom-based instruction as defined in Ed Code. A good way to kind of look at this is we have a form SAB 5001 that is what the districts will be submitting to update their eligibility. When I was referencing that, that form is on our website under forms, and in the instructions, it tells districts like what to report and what not to report in terms of what type of students are basically, housed by our program. But it does sound to me like that possibly maybe wouldn't qualify under just the non-classroom based instruction requirement. Are there hardship factors when applying? So the only thing that we have are the preference points that I just mentioned. Low income is one of them, which we use the free and reduced price meal percentages, but that's it. We don't have facility hardship issues within our program. We do have a separate program called facility hardship where districts may apply on behalf of a charter school if the charter school is in a facility owned by the district to provide funding for facility hardship. And then we don't have financial hardship. We do have just the ability to request a loan for your match. Remember, we are a 50-50 program, 50 state grant, 50 applicant match. And that loan, you don't have to be financially hardship to request a loan. You just need to be able to support in your financial soundness determination the ability to pay back the loan. So no hardship factors. What if you are building an athletic facility or a CTE classroom that is more extensive square footage than a traditional classroom, but supports fewer students in terms of square footage? Does that change the funding formula? It does not. So our loading standard is based on just the grade level that will be in there, and then we put those pupil grants in there. So sometimes that's going to be more than what you're using or what you need, but in some situations like this, it could possibly be less. In past rounds, have districts received enough priority points to receive funding if their projects did not include rehab for the additional 40 priority points? Yes, they have. Definitely districts that have that rehab element are strong. They're very competitive. But because every round is different, every pool is different, and we have those categories, if you look at that funding matrix example, we're going to go through all of those categories, funding, the highest charter with the highest points in each category. And then we loop around and we just kind of keep doing it and going through those categories again until we run out of money. Well, if we only receive 3 applications in a particular region, then it's going to be a good chance that we might be able to loop around and possibly hit all 3, and they have very low preference points. We also definitely have, some categories that are less competitive. For example, that grade level because it's based on the highest grade that you're approved to serve in the petition, K through 6 charters, usually from looking at past rounds and past matrices, tend to be kind of a small population. So it's different every round in terms of who can be successful, but we definitely have funded projects that did not receive the 40 points. But it is definitely common that a lot of the projects that receive funding do have that rehab element. Either they're a standalone rehab or combination rehab and new construction. Are all the same supplemental grants available for the final apportionment as what is shown in the preliminary apportionment calculation? So yes, so everything that you see at the PA is also available at final. Except in rehab, there is an additional item that is eligible at final, and it is you can get funding for access compliance when you come in at final, and that is the only thing that I can think of. It's provided for in regulation at the final apportionment, but it's not reserved at the PA. If I think of something else, I will bring it up with the next question, but I think that's the one that is not available at PA, but it's been available at final. But then yes, everything that you get at PA does transfer over to final. Is there a date on when we would find out if our school was selected for funding? So yeah, so when you come in and we process the applications, we will first do like a partial process where we are reviewing everything in your application to determine your preference points and your funding matrix. We are going to receive a lot of applications. And so we do that first step and we rank everybody. Then once we do that, we start going down that list and then fully processing the application to determine cost, to determine how much you're eligible for. And then once we have gone all the way down and we've reached our limit, and projects are being found financially sound, so people might be falling out, they might have to reduce the amount they're requesting because they can't be found sound. Once we complete all of that, we will take the applications to the state allocation board and award a preliminary apportionment. That is when that agenda with supporting documentation is published, that is when you will know that you are receiving a preliminary apportionment. So what board that happens at, we really can't say until all of the applications are submitted and we kind of see the amount of applications we're working with. Also, every round is different in terms of how long it takes us to process the applications and finalize the information. But yes, so basically, short answer is you will know once the agenda with supporting documentation prior to the board is published that we award those preliminary apportionments at. Let's see. Down. Okay, so here's the link. Are there sample agreements that can be reviewed prior to application? So that would be a question for CSFA. I'll let them, I'm going to keep going through, and then maybe when Ryan starts, he can go ahead and just touch on that just quickly. But I'll let them touch that so I don't hold them back from their presentation too much. Okay, question regarding overcrowding points for new construction projects. If a district passes a resolution approving the new construction application, but then provides calculations showing there are no or very low in-house students being served by the project's new classrooms, would that charter receive any points for overcrowding? How are the 4 to 40 points assessed for varying levels of unhoused students being served? So basically, the district is going to update their eligibility. We're going to determine based on the number of unhoused pupils they have if they are even overcrowded. They would then need to certify that the charter school is going to be housing those overcrowded pupils. So first step, determine if the district is overcrowded. The severity of overcrowding determines, okay, this project is eligible to receive this amount of points based on this severity of overcrowding. So that's kind of step one. Then the district does have to certify that the charter project will house their unhoused pupils. And based on the number of pupils they certify to compared to the number of classrooms you have in your project, like, are you building 10 classrooms, but that would maybe house 250 kids, but they say only 5 kids theirs will be housed by yours? that will calculate the effort. How much of an effort is the project doing to house those kids? And then that effort percentage determines, okay, so let's say based on the severity of the overcrowding, you're eligible for 10 points. The effort is very low. So then of that 10 points, you can only receive 4 because of the low effort. Those may not be exact point breakouts because I don't have the regulation in front of me, but the regulation in the school facility program regulations, and I believe I provided the sections when I was talking about this on the slide, talks about step-by-step how this is calculated. First step and then the second step. So I would go ahead and revert to that. But yeah, so basically it's how severe are they overcrowded, and then the effort the project is giving to relieve that overcrowding based on the pupils the district certifies will be housed. Where can we access the recording of today's webinar? I believe it will be posted under the meetings tab and on the charter school facilities webpage. So basically below where the link was. And Ryan Malloy, please just pop in and say I'm wrong if I'm wrong, but I believe that below the link is where the webinar recording will be posted once it is ready.
Nope, you're correct.
Yay. Okay, so, oh, it's right there. And it's also going to be on the OPSC's YouTube page. We would like to both add new capacity as well as replace 2 portables with permanent buildings with the entire project, or just the equivalent of the 1 classroom. So that would be a combination project that we were talking about. So you would come in for a new construction project to add 1 classroom, and then a rehabilitation project to rehab those, that replace those 2 existing classrooms, as long as they qualify, as long as they're of age, owned by the districts. That would be for those 2. If all of these facilities are owned by the charter, then you would just be able to request new construction funding for the one that you're adding, because rehab is not an option under the charter school. But reach out to me so I can maybe cover that specific scenario for you, just in case, so I can ask specific questions and make sure that that question is, the answer is appropriate.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Is a portion of the funding already allocated to CSFP projects from previous propositions? No. So all of this funding is just going to be available for new charter applicants. What is the range of grant funds available per project? That really depends. I guess it could be anywhere from, if you're going to do a new construction project, 1 classroom times those pupil grants. And then for rehab, it would be 1 classroom being rehabilitated and its square footage. That would kind of be, I guess, your minimum, and that would be no supplementals. And really, it's kind of hard to say what the top range would be. Just keep in mind, you have to be found financially sound for the project, and the application needs to support that funding. I think, okay, this looks like the same question that I just answered. So I'm going to pass that regarding the overcrowding and how the points are assessed. Nope, there you go. And Kevin provided, this is the specific rec section that gives you a chart and step-by-step on how to do the overcrowding. Okay, I don't see any hands. Am I right with that? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and stop. I already stopped sharing. I'm going to go ahead and let Ryan come on. Just remember, if there was anything that you feel like, oh, I don't know if she understood my question, reach out to me and we can go ahead and discuss the specifics and discuss it more.
I think Alana had one last question.
Oh.
Regarding a district.
Oh, thank you. Okay, can a district request new construction funding, replacement of portables with permanent based on option 2? Yeah, so what this is where a district is going to be submitting, I'm assuming the district is going to be submitting an application on behalf of a charter school for rehabilitation of district-owned facilities, possibly, and combine it with a new construction application. Or maybe just a new construction application at their site, and they want to demolish and replace portables at the site. So that might sound to you, oh, that sounds like rehab. But when districts, when they establish eligibility, new construction eligibility, they have the option, if they have a lot of portables in their district, to exclude portables. So that way we would allow them to come in, and we have like a tally of the number of excluded portables. We would allow them to demolish and replace them using new construction funding because they have so many, and the preference is for those to be demolished and replaced with permanent construction. So yes, Alana, the same thing under SFP, where districts can do that with a new construction project, applies under the CSFP. But only a district would be able to do that. The district would need to be the applicant. What is the best? Oh, so that would be my email. That was the last slide. So if you want to set up an email or a call to talk project specifics, the last slide of my presentation, Erin Canine provided my email and my phone number. So email is probably best because then I can go ahead and just reply to that, and I have your information to set up a Teams meeting. But if you prefer calling, that is fine as well. All right, Ryan.
Thanks, Ryan. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for your patience as we get through this long webinar, but it's really important information, and applying for these funding rounds is a heavy lift. So, deciding whether you're eligible or not is, a really important consideration. So thanks for all that information, Erin. My name is Katrina Johansson. I'm the Executive Director of the California School Finance Authority. So as mentioned earlier, this program has always been, it was created back in 2002, and the program was created as a pilot program with OPSC and CSFA jointly administering the program. So our role is, primarily to determine schools or projects financially sound, as well as administer program agreements. We'll also be generating your payment schedule, but payments will actually be offset or intercepted by DGS, which is kind of back of the house for OPSC. I'm joined today by Ryan Story. He's a manager one and Ryan oversees this program as well as our SB 740 program, as well as a lot of other programs. So thanks for being here today, Ryan. Colin Smith, if you can put your camera on. Colin is an AGPA at CSFA. Colin and Jeff, Ryan, myself, and probably another couple of analysts will be responsible for determining your project financially sound. So we'll be your kind of concierge within CSFA, shepherding your project through the financial soundness process. There'll be a lot of back and forth. So getting to know your, CSFA rep will be an important relationship as you get through this process. Next slide, Ryan. Just a little bit about CSFA. We are a state agency. We were created back in 1985 to assist school districts, county offices of education, and community colleges to finance working capital as well as educational facilities. We do account to a 3-member board. The state treasurer, Fiona Moss, serves as the chair. The superintendent of public instruction, Tony Thurman, serves as a member, as well as Joe Seppenshaw, the director of finance. We do meet monthly in Sacramento, and we do administer, administer over 15 programs to assist school districts, community college districts, and charter schools since 2000. We have offices in Sacramento as well as Los Angeles, but you will be submitting your application online. But if need does necessitate applications, and folks are welcome in either office. Next slide, Ryan. We're just providing a brief overview of the programs administered by CSFA. Many of you probably are participating in these programs. The Charter School Facility Grant Program, or known as SB 740. This program, the Charter School Facility Program. We have a Charter School Revolving Loan Fund program, as well as a funded State Charter School Facility Incentive Grant Program, which is a federal program. We have a very robust conduit financing program, as well as the Charter School Facility Credit Enhancement Programs, which enhance our bond financings. The italicized programs are not obsolete or not in use right now, or funding is pending. So that is a state aid intercept note program, as well as a charter school advances of state aid payment program. Those two programs were created during the state's last deferrals. And then we were written into a program for student housing at community colleges. And again, that funding is on hold. So with that, I believe I'm turning it over to Colin.
Thank you, Katrina. Good morning, everyone. My name is Colin Smith, and thank you for joining us today. This program is jointly administered by OPSC and CSFA. First, applications that are submitted to OPSC for review to determine eligibility. Once OPSC gives its approval, CSFA will review the application to determine the school's financial soundness. The financial soundness review assesses whether the school has the ability to meet financial obligations, manage risks effectively, and sustain operations over time, and also relates to the school's ability to repay its portion of funding over a 30-year period. The funding structure of the program provides a 50-50 cost-sharing model. So the state will cover 50% of the total project cost as a grant, meaning the school doesn't have to repay that portion, and the remaining 50% comes from in the form of a local matching share, which, if in the form of a loan, the applicant is responsible for repaying over time. This loan comes with a low fixed interest rate, currently around 3%, and payments are made through CSFA's intercept mechanism. This allows the state to redirect certain funding to ensure debt obligations related to the school's facility financing are met. The loan term cannot exceed 30 years, making it accessible financing option for charter schools. Title to the school facility can be held by a local school district, governmental entity, or charter school itself, depending on the project structure and the agreements in place. Next slide, please. Let's take a look at how this program has evolved over time. Since its inception, the Charter School Facility Program has been funded through voter-approved bond measures, ensuring ongoing support for charter school development. In 2002, CSFA was written into a pilot program for charter school facilities, launching CSFP with an initial $100 million when voters approved Proposition 47. And then just 2 years later, in 2004, voters approved Prop 55, adding $300 million to funding. And then most recently, in 2024, voters approved Prop 2, adding $600 million, which is the single largest allocation in the program's history, ensuring continued support for charter school infrastructure. These funding rounds demonstrate California's ongoing commitment to ensuring charter schools have access to safe, modern facilities. Each proposition has allowed more schools to expand and improve their learning environments, benefiting students across the state. I'm now going to hand it over to Jeff to go over some facts and figures.
There's a small edit there. I'm actually going to step in front of Jeff here very quickly. Do apologize. I'm Ryan Story. As Katrina said, I'm the manager one overseeing this program. Thank you, Colin. Colin will be back to explain a little more detail about the application process. But we wanted to talk about some facts and figures really quickly. Since the program started in 2002, 2003, when we were approving awards, there's been over $1.45 billion awarded to 127 projects for 100 schools. The 50,000 students is a very conservative estimate based on when these projects were approved. It obviously has served a larger amount of students of these projects are still, in use and providing benefit to those charter schools and those charter school students. Prop 51, as you can see in there, is our largest round, which we could assume can kind of like be a lodestar for how much we think is going to, activity is going to be in Proposition 2, and also considering that is a larger dollar amount as well. So as mentioned before, and we'll speak about it secondly, there's a process to this. With CSFA, we start with you almost at the beginning, but then we stick with you through the rest of the way. And just this is kind of a layout of kind of the statuses of the projects that we've overseen with OPSC. As you can see, as we move along the timeline to the right, more projects are either, at preliminary or advanced, and occupation, it goes up a little bit more when the rounds are larger, like Prop 51. We've had 49 rescinded. Wanted to hit the note about the ideas of timelines, as Aaron pointed out earlier. It's very, very important. It allows, missing timelines, missing deadlines, obviously has a negative repercussion on the program, and we would love to keep the rescissions as low as possible. And just this step, we're going to go over more about the App 1 and 2. with the application process with CSFA, and then the preliminary soundness review with CSFA. After we do the preliminary soundness review, we do the execution of program agreements. I know someone mentioned if they could see draft agreements with that. We're actually editing them with our attorney right now. So we're going to make sure, as it's a new funding round, we have a whole bunch of new that we want to make sure that everything's up to date with any type of changes that might have happened in the past. Oh, it's a long time, I guess, 7 years since we've last touched them. So we'll be approving those at our board. So please sign up for our CSFA listserv. You'll be able to see those as well. And if so, you can also reach out to us and we can work to provide something if needed. But funding agreements and or memorandums of understanding, if you're doing a lump sum, we don't need a funding agreement. It will just be a memorandum of understanding. But those need to be executed by all the parties participating, districts included if it is a rehabilitation project. Then some schools, depending on what their project is, will apply for advanced financial soundness review. That will be for accessing site or design funds. It is very similar to the preliminary. In fact, we sometimes do preliminary and advanced in the same action because of the fact that schools might need to anticipate getting access to the advanced funding in a quick time period. But it's pretty similar. Step 5, the final financial soundness review is a little bit more in depth, as the last time we'll be able to see your finances in the guarantee that you'll be able to make debt service coverages as far and the other financial benchmarks that our analyst Jeff will go into detail about. And then post-compliance requirements, those we won't go into detail about those today, as this is literally the beginning of the process. But know that when you enter this program, you'll be working with CSFA for the lifetime of the loan, or I'm sorry, matching share payment, and as well as any post-compliance requirements that are put in our statute and regulation. So to go into more detail about the application process, I'm going to go ahead and pass it on back to Colin.
Thank you, Ryan. Let's start with the basics of how to get your application submitted. One important thing to note right away is that applying for CSFP is a two-step process. You'll need to submit separate applications to both OPSC and CSFA. CSFA evaluates your financial soundness, as I mentioned earlier. This is going to determine if the school is eligible for funding. Both approvals of OPSC and CSFA are necessary to move forward. CSFA portion of the application, the easiest option is going to be to submit your application online through CSFA's portal, which can be accessed on our website. In the event access to our portal is unavailable, you can submit a hard copy application. The hard copy application is a state standardized form. You'll need to have it signed with original signatures. Include a CD-ROM or a flash drive that contains the signed and completed application, along with all supporting documentation. The hard copy application materials must be mailed or hand delivered, as email and fax submissions are not accepted. No matter how you submit, your application must be received by CSFA before the final filing deadline. This deadline is posted on CSFA website, so it's important to check regularly and plan ahead. Currently, the filing round is July 3rd through October 30th. I believe Aaron went over those deadlines and the time that you need to have your application submitted, and submitting that to CSFA is no different. If your application is late, it will not be reviewed, so make sure everything is complete and turned in on time. Upon review of your financial information, if your school's financial status isn't clear, CSFA may ask for additional documentation. If you fail to provide the requested information, your application could be considered incomplete and rejected. So it's crucial to provide thorough and well-documented application supporting documentation. Next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, now let's go into the supporting documents that you'll need. First, you're going to want to confirm who will be responsible for covering the 50% matching share of the funding. This could be the school itself, the school district, or a CMO. You must also specify whether the matching share will be repaid as a loan or contributed as a lump sum. The matching share doesn't necessarily have to be one or the other. We recently had a school split the matching share where half was paid as a lump sum through the district and the remainder was taken as a loan with the state at a fixed rate. So there's going to be flexibility with the matching share and the loan. Next, you must provide a copy of your charter authorization or renewal to prove that the school is currently approved to operate. Additionally, you'll need to submit an updated project description which could include such details as the overall scope of the project, so new buildings, additional classrooms, renovations, the completed or the expected completion dates and occupancy plans. Occupancy dates are very important to us because we're going to be drafting your payment schedules that are set to begin 1 year after the facility is occupied. So if your school is anticipating a phased occupancy, that would be information that we would want to know so we can plan our payment schedules accordingly. And then also we would want to know the project's location and how it's going to support student growth. You may also be asked to provide written reports and evaluations from your chartering authority that demonstrate the school's academic and operational performance. This ensures that the school is receiving funding that are effectively managed and serving students well. You'll need to submit audited financial statements from the last 3 fiscal years. If the most recent audit isn't available yet, you can provide unaudited actuals or your final budget calculations as a substitute. You'll also need to include detailed budget for your current year and projections for the next 5 years, along with explanations of any assumptions used in your financial forecasting. Next slide. CSFA will also evaluate your current and projected enrollment numbers, just like the financial documents. This will include current numbers and projections for the next 5 years. You want to include your average daily attendance, percentage counts for FRPM, English learners, foster youth, waitlist numbers, and then of course FTE teacher count. CSFA also looks at your leadership team and governance structure. So you'll need to submit resumes for key administrators like your CEO, CFO, business officer, superintendent, and principal. Additionally, you'll need to provide a list of board members to include their names, roles, and terms of office. And then if your school has borrowed $50,000 or more for a period longer than a year, you'll need to disclose that information. And then there is a legal status questionnaire that will need to be completed, which just provides any details of any past or ongoing legal or financial issues. And with that, I will now be handing it over to Jeff, I believe.
Yeah, hi, my name is Jeff Taylor. I'm an analyst here at CSFA. Thank you, Colin. So I'm going to just touch on a little more detail in regards to both financial projections, some of the historical financials, interims, and other information on existing liabilities that the school or borrower has. So we are looking for 5 years of financial projections, or 2 years following the first full year that the facility that has been improved is occupied. So whichever is longer. For example, consider that you have a school that begins occupancy of a facility that's being improved with loan funds in February of 2027. We would be looking for financial projections to begin February of 2028, extending out for 2 years. If occupancy is going to happen where those 2 years afterwards is less than the 5 years from present, then we would need a little longer on the financial projections. Now, accompanying those projections, we do need assumptions. This is key to fully understanding what reasoning is being used for the projections, maybe why there's student growth, why cash flow changes, and so on. So please just make a point to include those because they really help us out in completing the analysis. We're also looking for those 3 years of audited historical financials, going back 3 years, of course, that have been audited and approved. In addition to that, we'll need interim for the last year. We understand these are not audited, but if you can get close, say within the, within the last quarter, this would be perfect for us to complete the analysis. In addition, any lump sum contributions just need proof and confirmation of who's providing those, the source, and that they are going to be available. And as Colin touched on, we need an explanation of what the project is and the timeline, both for understanding what the project is going to be accomplishing, is the timeline viable, as well as does it appear that the scope of work can be achieved for the financing that's being requested, as well as just our understanding. Next slide, please. So in those first 2 years of repayment, which again starts 1 year after occupancy of the facility that has been improved with loan proceeds, we are going to be looking for 100% debt service coverage, being a DSCR debt service coverage ratio of 1-to-1 or 100%. This means that if the school is higher than that, it won't be an issue, but obviously lower, we are going to need to find a way to either adjust that or make that work for the loan. In addition, we just need to understand enrollment and ADA levels in those projections, your free cash flow, both per ADA and just as it is, net working capital available, and any additional information regarding to match and share payment and net working capital relative to operating expenses. So in addition to with this information, including the assumptions with your projections, will help better explain this to us as we complete our analysis. All right, Ryan, next slide.
Thanks, Jeff. So that wraps up our presentation right now. Here's some of our information on screen. And I'll go ahead if people have questions. I see one question in the chat, of course, if everyone has any questions. For example, I know Will Flores, I will get back to you today, good sir. Seeing you in here reminded me that I owe you an email, so I will get you that email today. But any type of contact on here is available through the CSFA website or csfp@treasurer.ca.gov. Everyone in the meeting today has access to that email as well, so we can go ahead and I'll access that if you want to just ask a general question. For Joyce's question inside the chat here, no. Her question here was, if you're using a consultant for assistance, do you want a CV or info on those consultants? We don't need that far down unless that consultant happens to be a board member as well, that we would want to have that information and be aware of that. But no, not if it's just an outside consultant helping you guys with this singular project itself. It's more about the actual management, decision-making, governing board of the charter school itself and positions that are also decision-making. Got one more question here from John. What if you're asking for reimbursement of funds already spent? Do you need to go through this process?
Yes, you do.
Yes.
Okay, I'll answer that. So that would, if your local match was already spent, the state is still making an investment in that project as a grant, and we want to go to our board and ensure that it's a good investment on behalf of the state. So we would still be doing the exact same review on more qualitative as well as quantitative factors to ensure that, you know, your operation is sustainable over time. So yeah, I think, I hope I had that question correct. Is that right, John?
Maybe, if I is it all right if I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I see the financial review, but if you're not asking for any grant money, I mean, you're not having to produce a match. You're just asking for a reimbursement of money already spent on a modernization. So we're a new school, then do we need to go through the same financial soundness? Since
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you're seeking a grant from the state, the 50%. So you're saying we financed our project, but we want 50% back from the state as a grant.
Right.
Yes, we would still want to tell our board that this is, a good credit. So we'd still want to make sure that the state was investing its 50% grant into a sound, a sound project, a sound school that's sustainable. So we would still go with our review is, typically a 10 to 17 page document, depending on if we're looking at a school and a CMO, or there's different fact patterns. And we would still do the same review because there's a lot of qualitative factors that we look at. So that we would still be doing, it'd be a lot easier for us, quite frankly, but yeah, we would still be looking and presenting a financial soundness review to our board. And then someone earlier had a question about program agreements. Did you answer that already, Ryan?
Yeah, already answered that one.
Okay.
Oh, really quickly, John, there's no debt service measurement for that. That would be the one thing different. So we wouldn't report on a debt service coverage because we would just inform that it's a matching share in the rears kind of thing.
Gotcha.
So it wouldn't be like a disqualification if we weren't able to show the school could pay for a hypothetical matching share payment or anything like that. So just want to make sure if anyone was curious on that one, I think you might know, but just in case, we would be treating it like a lump sum in that sense. And as Katrina mentioned, the review would be focused on more of the qualitative matters.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. That's very helpful.
got one right here. If our school is planning to use an applicant match, do we need to have that in the bank and ready to pay at the time of grant funding? So for us on our end, for any lump sum, we're gonna need proof that the funds are either earmarked or benchmarked or earmarked specifically for those projects, or have the availability to be used for those projects. Most of our examples would be district matches. So what we would have is the district go ahead and provide us not only some type of written confirmation that they are going to, that this lump sum amount is going to be provided to this project specifically, and additionally provide proof that we can verify that those funds are in an account. Typically, most time audits, and a lot of the time they have those set aside in different type of funds, building funds, construction funds, and with the project or the amount itself specifically stated in there. And then we would like to see something as an interim kind of statement, something maybe more accurate to the time period we're currently in, because audited obviously be a little bit in the past, to verify that those funds are truly there and able to be used on the project. And Aaron, I'm not certain if you guys require anything, my ignorance here on this. I don't know if you guys require anything your end when it comes to lump sum confirmation, but for our end, that's the only benchmark or the bar you need to clear.
Yeah, there's nothing on our end. We look towards you to confirm that. We just need confirmation of knowing how much. So when we create our funding shells and how much, bond authority reserve, we need to just know that dollar amount.
Thank you. Of course, any other questions, any comments, please do reach out to us. Obviously, we will, can't cover everything here. We're doing a similar thing to OPSC as well. We will be doing our own webinar, and we don't have the date set yet as well, but it will go into more depth about our application process and our financial soundness review process itself. So if you are not signed up for the CSFA listserv, please go to our website. It's on the left-hand side of the page itself, and you'll get notifications on it, and you will be notified when we go ahead and set the date for our CSFA CSFP application webinar.
All right, it looks like that is the end of the questions for CSFA. So then we'll go ahead and have Angel come on from CDE. This is the last presentation, and hers is short and sweet. Mine's the heavy duty one that takes forever, so they get shorter as they go through.
Great, thank you. I appreciate it. There's been a lot of information that's out there about these state programs, and I think hopefully, like Aaron said, mine will be nice and short. A little bit of background on how the CDE plays into OPSC and CSFA's role with this. The most important piece for charters, if they've never applied or gone through a state process before, would be underneath the California Code of Regulations, Title V. Section 14001 talks about site acquisition, which we'll talk a little bit about that. And then 14030 through 36 are really what the facilities need to look like. So a lot of this has already been touched on, so I don't think that we will spend any time with that. So the very first thing that you'll need to do before you can apply on OPSC's website is you'll need to come to me for a site size letter. We have a breakdown of how we look at the recommended acreage for school sites, and that information needs to be provided to OPSC. So what I do ask, though, is that you don't wait until the last week of October to send me a request for the letter, because I won't be able to get through them all. So that's the toughest part about that, is to make sure that you come to us early. And I'm going to say that a lot. Come to us early and often at the CDE. The letter that I would provide to you for the initial recommended site size must be included into that application in OPSC when you submit. It can't be submitted afterwards. There's a little bit of information that you'll need on this. The grade configuration, the master plan capacity, or the amount of students that you plan to serve based on the loading standards that OPSC uses. If there's parking on site, and then also if it's above ground or below ground parking, you'll need to make sure that you let us know with that. If you have a PE program that's written into your charter petition, you would need to show how that the space that you have on the site would allow for you to provide PE. And then are you looking at multi-level construction or are you looking at one level? So after you receive the preliminary apportionment, then very next steps would be a site and plan approval that you would get from the CDE. Those approval letters need to be included with the funding application, not the initial grant application. So there's a couple of processes that we'll walk through. If you're looking to acquire a new site, whether it has a building on it or not, whether it's a commercial building that you're going to tear down, if you're looking to buy a site that has never gone through a CDE approval before, you would need to go through this process. So you would select your potential site, and then you would reach out to me to come down or up or wherever you happen to be to put my boots on the ground to look at just the overview of what I can see on the ground, looking for hazards that might trigger some Title V requirements. We do always prefer to have 3 or more sites. However, I understand that a lot of times, especially if you're in urban areas, there aren't going to be 3 potential sites for us to be able to look at. Once you identify your preferred site, you would need to go through the required studies to receive contingent site approval. And on our form 4.01C, there's a charter specific form for that one. You would need to provide the documentation through CEQA, through DTSC, GeoHaz, Geotech, and then any other initial studies that would be requested based on the site constraints that we would see there. You can then request early site acquisition funds from OPSC in most cases, and of course, Aaron touched on that. Once you have all of the studies done and everything has been completed, you'll be submitting your final components to get final site approval. Now, there's 2 different sets of approval. One is for the site and one is for the plans. So there are 3 things, if you're looking at sites, there are 3 things that will kill a site where we won't be able to approve the site to use for a school site. One of those will be if there's a fault line that goes across the property, if there are pipelines that go across the property, and then the third one is aeronautics. Charter schools, if you are within 2 nautical miles of any airport, must have an aeronautics study done, and that's done through the DOT, and I would be the intermediary to help you through that process. If aeronautics comes back and says no, there is no mitigating that. So once that's done, it's done. That's why I say, if you're interested in a site, reach out to me early. Don't wait until you've already purchased, you're already down the road, you have your plans, you've already sold it to the community, and now we come back and we realize that there are some constraints or there are some pieces of the property that would not make it approvable through the state program. The second process that you would need to go through with the CDE is for plan approval. So plan approval, if you have never come in for a state program before, can seem a little bit daunting for charter schools that have always done their own thing, or you might already be in a facility that you think is, is great and it's working for you, but when you're playing in a different sandbox, there are always different rules. So we have to ensure, just like Katrina was saying and Aaron was saying, this is a state program, and if you are requesting state funds in order to develop your school, either to build or to rehab, the state needs to make sure that you are creating equivalent sites and schools that are the exact same as every other school in the state. So again, early and often, reach out to me with your preliminary plans. I'll look at napkin sketches. I'll look at design documents, anything that you want us to look at. There's no cost for you to submit to us to look at the plans because there are Title V implications. It's very important for you to read through and understand what the requirements of Title V are. Classroom site size, line of sight issues, PE programs. There are a lot of pieces that go into where your special education classrooms are placed, sound mitigation. There are quite a few elements that go into our review that is different than DSA's review. When DSA reviews a project, they're looking at things from an architecture point of view. They're counting boxes, they're making sure your structure is sound. When we look at things from the CDE, we're looking at your plans from an education perspective. Does it make sense? And sometimes that can be different than how your charter has operated in the past. Once you submit your plans, you would then resolve any CDE concerns and submit DSA ready plans. Again, I can't say enough, early and often. If you wait until you're stamped out of DSA to come to CDE for approval, you're running the risk of having to go back to DSA with either a change order, a counter, a change order, a counter change, anything that would need to be reviewed by DSA. Once you've received final site approval, if you're looking for a new site, and then you receive final plan approval, you can then occupy the site. And I know Erin had touched on needing some specific documents in order to occupy. With new construction, it's very, very important to note that you cannot occupy those spaces, even in a hybrid program. So if you've got 3 that are rehabbing and you've got 2 new construction classrooms that go into that, you cannot occupy those 2 new construction classrooms without having final site and final plan approval. That's really important. There are some resources that are available online to help you look at and evaluate potential school sites before I would even come and take a look at them. The school site analysis and development guide, that's where I am taking the calculations for the recommended acreage. So we look at your grade span, we look at the number of students that you're planning to serve, and then we come up with a requirement for that or a guideline for that. If you're working with a local school district, you're working with an authorizer, they have gone or may have gone through this process before, they would be a very good resource. Any local planning agencies, it's important that you reach out to the city planners, anybody that would kind of get in your way. Make sure that you've got good relationships with those architects. If you're working with an architect, it's important that you emphasize to them that they design spaces that meet Title V. If you're working with an architect that understands what Title V is, and then you are designing, you're submitting to us early, you're going through DSA, all of the boxes are checked and all of the Title V requirements and all of DSA requirements are met, it makes the process a whole lot smoother for you to be able to make sure that your final plan approval is going to be approved. The more sites, resources that we have on our website, again, we talked about a few of these. A small school site policy, this one I think is important to touch on just because if you are under 50 or 70% of the recommended acreage, so if you, the CDE's recommended acreage is 10 acres, which is pretty common for an elementary school, and you are looking to purchase or looking to rehab on a site that is less than 6.9 acres, so you're at 69% or lower, there are some additional requirements with looking at a PE plan. We would look and see what kind of field space do you have, what does your PE program entail. If you are under 50% of the recommended acreage, then we run into a few more hurdles that aren't insurmountable, but just to be aware of. There are no Title V exemptions if you are underneath 50%. Once you get under 50%, we also have to create a small school site worksheet, which I would work with you or your representative would work with you on to figure out what the density of that site would be. So if you've got a 3-acre site and you want to put 1,000 kids on that site, you would need to prove how that would work. Multi-level construction or a below ground parking helps get you to some additional acreage, if you will, to increase that amount. Joint use is also another way for you to be able to increase your usable acreage. However, joint use must be adjacent, or I think we're just going to go with adjacent. There are a lot of factors that go into that. If you're looking at a site that you think has some joint use possibilities, that's, if you've got a school district school that's across the street and you're going to use their fields, then we would look at that. If you've got if you're looking at a site that's right next to a tennis club, then we can look at how you would be able to utilize those resources at those additional sites for joint use to increase your acreage. We've also looked at rooftop play areas. And so if you can increase your square footage on the rooftop, whether it's a rooftop track or some hardscape, that also will play into the acreage calculation and will increase the density that you have. If you're under 50%, we'll be having a lot of conversations to make sure that you are within all of the necessary requirements. On our website is also some staff assignments. I am one of 5 field reps within the state, or 6. I think we're 5 or 6 now. And every region has a specific field rep, which you would be working with. However, I am the charter subject matter expert, and so I would be working in close conjunction with you and the field rep. And so if you need any information, again, here's my contact information. You'll need to reach out to me via email to request your site recommendation letter. That needs to happen first. Again, I cannot stress enough, early and often, we are here to help. That's what I'm here for. Please utilize us in any way that you need. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. I usually don't know the answer, but I might know who to send you to. So at least give me a call, send me an email, anything that we can do to help get you through this process. It's doable. And we've done a lot of these projects, and we are more than glad to help you get through this. So with that, I will see if I can increase my screen if there's any questions. That's a good question. So where can we find the CDE and CFA slide decks? I think maybe Erin, I'll let you touch on that. Do you want us to send them to you and create however you want to do that?
They are on our webpage, on OPSC's webpage, and our facilitator here provided a link where you can access it in the response here. So they're combined. You'll see one link that says PowerPoint presentation, and all three of them are combined as one PDF. So there's not three different links, but so you can get that by this link here on our website.
Great. Any other questions? I don't see any hands. Okay, well, thank you.
All right, so then that ends our presentation. As I mentioned before, please feel free to reach out to each of the individual agencies that presented if you have questions on the specific topic that they covered. Also, reach out to me if you want to discuss your project, what it might qualify for. It's a lot easier if I can ask questions and we can really get into the specifics, and I can get a good understanding of what you are intending to do. But email me or call me and we can go ahead and set up a time for that. This will be posted on our website once we finalize all of our requirements that we need to be able to post our recordings. And the PowerPoint presentation is posted on the website now. Also, go to the charter webpage. Remember, the links to all of those notice of the sample notifications and the checklist and everything are there for your review as well. If there are no additional questions, we will go ahead and end the presentation. If you want to go ahead and stop recording, Ryan.